All right, good evening. Welcome to week three's class here. It's 6 o'clock, and I know people have busy schedules, but so there's some people might come in late. But for everybody's sake, we want to go ahead and start on time. So it's 6 o'clock. Let's get started. Um, so the first part we're going to review is some of the things that happened based on Julie's case review, informed conversation, and I want to provide a little more direction on some of those things. So just to kind of summarize her conversation, brief point, there was a school nurse who grabbed the wrong vial of insulin versus the influenza vaccine, gave the wrong medication, patient harm, two um, two children actually were hospitalized because of it. So here's some screenshots of some of the conversations that were happening on the forum, and I really appreciate like digging into some things. Um, Here are some good references. Um, One of the things I do want to talk about, like, I want you to be able to get a little bit more in the conversations. So some of them are a little bit short. I want you to be able to dig a little bit more. And it's okay to have like a short thought, but then let's come back and have a thought. So you can do it on your own time. Some people are going to prefer to do it more towards the beginning of the week. I mean, you start right after this class, so you can get some of your comments in. Um, I do ask, let me go back to the point, Saturday night, please have your comments in by Saturday night. I don't care what time Saturday night. So it gives me Sunday to go through them so that we can be prepared for today, Mondays. Jay, she brought up some parts, about, some facts about government regulation. So it is very true that there are government regulations, more so incentives. Start off with incentives, and now are the punishment phase related to using electronic medical records. And it's hard to believe that in today's age that there's actually things still happening on paper. Um, but it's actually not required of a school nurse to be on electronic medical record in that organization not to have to do it because payment is not coming through government system of through CMS in a case like that. Now, there are increasing amount of healthcare organizations that have partnered with school systems and are allowing those schools to use those healthcare electronic medical records outside of the hospital or own physician practices. Challenge, I mean, those systems are millions and millions of dollars, so it becomes increasingly impossible for even a school district to afford to participate in them, but there's some borrowing options that have been allowed. Even still in the case of medications, I mean, there's still increased use of scanners is difficult. There's cost to it. There's training to it. So a lot of healthcare systems are resistant to over-investing in that technology. The other part of it is if that technology belongs to healthcare system and they are required to maintain those pieces of equipment to make sure that they're working appropriately, and the logistics of maintaining equipment that's off-site and keeping track of it is very difficult. So a scanner in a nurse's office in a school can be quite difficult to do. Now, Alex pointed out the upside of some organizational structure, which was a nice contrast point. So you have a nurse that is completely not overseen by a healthcare system that has all these rules and regulations to keep people safe. But there are some upsides, and I appreciate Alex bringing that to the side. Like being small and not managed by a large system gives you the ability to be more flexible and meet your patient, your customer's need where it might happen, as opposed to being restricted by a heavy amount of rules and regulations. So one of the things I want to dig into here too is some of the counter discussion. Current events. You guys may not be aware of it, but there was just a nurse convicted of negligent homicide in the case of medication error. So this was a 75-year-old man given the wrong medication, died because of it. And so what I mean, okay, somebody makes a mistake. Um, Anybody here made a mistake? Okay, now these mistakes are pretty significant. Somebody died. Shouldn't there be consequences? Um, it depends. And in this case, I mean, court has determined that she's going to go to jail because of this. The other side of this, um, something called Just Culture. So I've got a link here. I want you guys to look at it a little bit more. It's become the past probably 20 years or so, um, probably more so in the past 10, become a little more prevalent of, so if we punish somebody for doing something wrong, then you have a disincentive to report any issue that you might have uncovered. And as we're learning here, so many things in healthcare, it's the system that has failed that has resulted in people making those mistakes or those errors happening. So if you're a nurse and you notice that, these two vials are the exact same color and I could easily get them confused. I made a mistake, let's bring it forward. Or the names are very similar, let's bring it forward. If I made a mistake and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm not going to report this. Now the next nurse is going to make that exact same, or has a high potential for making that mistake. And that's where the concept of just culture comes in. So one of the examples that was given to me as this was being rolled out in an organization was in just culture. Okay, if you're late driving to your class, driving to work, if you're late, most organizations automatically punish you for being late. Now, just culture would ask the question, why are you late? If you're late because of traffic, and the question becomes, would somebody else in the exact same situation be able to make it here on time? And you can say, traffic on 22 gets pretty heavy. So we know when that happens, and you're probably going to have to give yourself 10 more minutes to be able to get here. That if every other person could reasonably figure that out, and you could say, then it's not okay to be late because you could have avoided that, everybody else does. So in just culture, you would receive some sort of warning, advanced discipline that could advance over time based on being late. Now, the question is, why were you late? And if it was because your tire blew out and it was just something that was completely freaked, that there was something on the road that couldn't be avoided, it's just something really strange happened. And you could say that really reasonably could have happened to me, could happen to you. And you'd say, that's a terrible thing. I don't want to have to punish you for something that you couldn't have reasonably prevented. And that's where that situation of them like medication error, like you can see, I could have easily made that mistake too by grabbing the wrong vial because they're located right next to each other and they're the exact same color and they have a similar sounding name. Just culture wouldn't punish you for that. It would look at, let's change the system. Let's spread them apart. Let's put a tag on it. Let's put a warning in the computer system that pops up and says, you need to pay attention to this because this could happen to you. And when you start prosecuting people, this woman, this nurse, she actually self-reported herself and said, I made this mistake. Now we're going to send her to prison for that. So now the next nurse that makes some sort of mistake in a similar form or fashion, they're going to go, I might not want to report myself because I could go to jail. And then the next nurse that makes that same mistake doesn't learn from the first one, and they make that mistake and say, I'm not reporting this, I don't want to go to jail. And that happens over and over again. So what we want to do is help save lives, learn from systems. And by doing something like this, by prosecuting it, create some challenges. So now I want to open up. Anybody else here want to bring up something, mistake they've made that they could learn from, or something they've seen, something like that? and we're going to call on Jessica. I want to hear your perspective on this.